What happens when an illustrator and designer decides to run their own design business? My guest today is Colby Clites, an illustrator and packaging designer who did not start in design but found their way into the industry. He not only loves making beer packaging labels but prefers meeting their clients in person to create brand experiences. Today, we're discussing his thoughts about design, AI in design, and much more. Let's dive straight in.
I'm Colby Clites, living up in Denver, Colorado. Before I went into design, I always wanted to be like a musician, and really my whole life, just like I don't know, I was like from like 10 years old up until really I went into college. I was like just gonna lean into music, and then I started doing design. I took my first kind of art classes up in college, and I think there's a moment there when I had one of these drawing classes, and it was very hard and challenging. But at the end of it, I had like a piece that I really admired and like I thought was like came out. I surprised myself with, and so from that I was like, oh, maybe I can actually do this.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and then yeah, but on the side too, I love camping, just music festivals, being out in nature, going on the water,
Yep.
snow skiing, yeah, all that kind of outdoorsy kind of fun
All
stuff.
the things you find in Denver.
Oh yeah.
I'm on the same page. I love that you said that there was a defining moment, which was making art and then having that just show you a new world and opening up the possibilities. I think I had a similar journey where I created something with acrylics and I was like, oh, this actually is cool. Maybe I can use this and monetize this hobby and make it into a business. So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
were there challenges? I know you were doing freelance before
Hmm.
starting your own business, so
Hmm.
I'm sure there were challenges. Can we talk about the challenges as well?
Definitely. I think the initial challenge when I try to just go out, branch out on my own and just, I don't know, yeah, do my own thing completely is I didn't really have any processes set up.
Yeah,
I knew how to design and create things, but I'd only had like been in house and had managers at certain places. So you get used to their work styles.
yeah,
Where when you're freelancing, suddenly you have all of these different clients that are kind of decision makers that work in very different ways. Some of them will talk over beers. Some of them I'll get a very in depth email. Some of them will just be a couple sentences.
yeah,
And it's just adapting to it. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned with that is just make it as easy as possible for them. Take the lift off their shoulders. And so if best bet is grabbing a beer, great. Let's just have a conversation. I'll take a bunch of notes
yep,
and it'll be an informal meeting. Or if it's just an email, perfect. I'll go back, reference that, and kind of read between the lines. And, sometimes just deep dive the client and figure out what they need.
yep,
But yeah, that's just something I learned as I was diving into freelance. But some of the more challenges, yeah, like building out those processes, like how to find clients, how to do your own accounting, project management, keeping yourself accountable with timing, digital marketing with trying to just, get the SEO for your site, trying to email people,
hmm,
just a lot of those things I didn't know as much when I first started. And I think that's been the benefit this time, because I
yeah.
built a lot of those processes. I was able to take things from other places I've worked, from people I've learned from, and just kind of apply it to what works for me.
Nice. So I know we talked about meeting people and clients in person, and I know you prefer that over
Hmm.
a virtual call. So how does that impact the process overall? I mean, has there been a situation where you quickly had to pivot your design from the initial layout to something new that they asked for, like in person? Hey, Colby, I'm here, and I want you to change this in the next 5 minutes. Has that happened, and how did you deal with that?
All the time. That does. I guess yeah. It just does. It just depends on the person.
Yeah,
You can do everything right. You can like what I'll do too is I'll really provide inspiration. I'll do sketches first, do early art,
yeah,
and so it's like there's a lot of checkpoints along the way to kind of like help prevent that.
yep,
But then like even a client this last week, we were working on like packaging and something else, but they come over and they're like, oh, like they just need like an email signature on the fly and like things like that. I'm like, I'm happy to do it. It's just like sometimes it's easier to go above and beyond once or twice
hmm,
than to try to hold your ground and then the client gets a little hesitant or something.
yeah,
And it's about building that trust with the client.
yep,
And so sometimes it's great. I just have to do it on the fly. It's like when I worked in house places, you don't really often have a choice. If it's like the leadership, the department head or someone's like, hey, we actually need this and I kind of need it in like an hour or something, you just have to do it. and
Yeah.
it sucks, but that just happens.
Yeah, it's all part of the deal. I
Yeah,
guess
pretty
it's all
much.
part of running your own business and then having to play like 10 roles
Oh,
together. I think
100%.
that leads me into the next thing where I think about what's been one of the most challenging things that you've had to do for a client in person, because that's a very different approach. I think most of us now, especially after the pandemic, have transitioned
Hmm.
into virtual meetings, and every like
Hmm.
I think most of the people work hybrid, and I know you do too, and only
Hmm.
meet clients on site sometimes, but it's still very different from the people that I come across in the design industry around me in the community. And I'm curious, what has been the most challenging project so far? And you don't have to name names. We know
Okay,
it's
that's
all under NDA.
fine. um, oh, that's tough. The most challenging. Um, it's not even like the design that I think it has been the most challenging. It's like some of these clients, like the feedback,
Hmm.
and like it's
Make the
sometimes the
logo
waiting.
bigger.
Yes, and it's like you have to realize that like sometimes, like, if let's say if it is make logo bigger, I'll do that, but I also show them two other versions that I'm gonna try to like push them towards. Where one
Yeah.
is maybe the logo has more contrast,
Yep.
another one maybe the logo is, I don't know, some other, maybe it's not as big as they were wanting, but I'm like it's still there. Um, it's like it's really about reading between the lines with a lot of
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
But when it comes to like the most challenging though, I think it's the ones that drag out for a long time.
Yep.
When we're waiting on details or information from third party vendors or something else, or where something is dependent on the client maybe getting the nutritional information or the ingredients,
Yeah.
and then ends up stalling for a month, 3 months or something, and it's just like, hey guys, we should have just wrapped this up and then we could have just done that then.
Yeah.
um so I think that's the most challenging, is whenever we start a project and we don't have all the information, and then it ends up being a 6 month project when it's like, oh, we could have done that in a month.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. I don't do packaging design, but I've always been interested in it. So
Hmm.
it's nice to hear about your process, and also the fact that you're depending on third party manufacturers and producers and printers.
Hmm.
So how did you end up finding your go-to printer, or is that something that the clients provide?
It varies. A
Yeah.
lot of clients will have a partner, and I'm always down to use them. I actually have a spreadsheet where I'm just collecting lists of these partners when I learn them from other people,
Yep.
just because like you just kind of build those relationships, and
Yep.
like, I don't know, your printer should always be your best friend. It's someone you want to like lean on, someone that can just call you on the fly, and like I can be that and be like, oh god, I need to take this right now. There's something on the press. Like there's a reason he's calling me. But one of my go-to ones right now is because when I was working in house for one of these full-time roles I had, they were our kind of core print partner, and we just built such a solid relationship. So now I try to bring them other clients as well.
Yep.
But with that said, I do have a few different packaging or print partners I lean on, just depending on what is needed.
Yep.
Like I have one that's great for just marketing like almost everything assets.
Hmm.
And then another local one up here in Colorado that's just fast, cheap, ready to ship it. And then when it comes to packaging, that's very different too. Like most nationally distributed beers and stuff,
Yep.
they build plates for those. And so you can only do like 6 colors because they're printed on aluminum and they're Pantones and it's very specific.
Yep.
Whereas like if you're doing a medium size or small run, a lot of places will do like shrink wrap kind of labels or sticker labels on them. And
Yeah.
you can do full color, you can do transparency, see through the metal. There's like different techniques depending on the print method. And it's
Yep.
also, yeah, it depends on the quantity. And then, yeah, it really depends
Too
on the
many moving
quantity.
parts. Too
Yeah,
many moving
100%.
parts. I
And so it
think,
depends on the client too.
yeah. Also, it also depends on the. I know a lot of the processes are standardized, but what if someone wants like a makeup product with a different shape of a bottle or a box? And that's
Yeah.
a whole different ball game. Like if it's not standard, you have to think about the die lines and create all of that too. So
Well,
yeah,
I'm running into that right now with a kind of beverage packaging
yeah.
kind of client, because they're doing these little drink tear packets, to
Oh,
where it's like the powder and then you kind of pour it in the drink, shake it up. And
yeah,
so we're doing that, and yeah, it's a custom thing for that, and then it's also like a box set that those go in of like a dozen.
yep.
And with that, it is a unique shape. But
Hmm.
I what I don't know, I've realized a lot of these packaging or print partners actually will create the die lines because they know how their machines work. They know
Yep.
kind of what is possible, what's not. And so sometimes I just like these people, I hit them up and was like, hey, we're trying to do this. It's 3 by 3 inches. There's going to be 12 of them. And
Yeah.
they provided the die line based on everything. And so that kind of makes my life 100 times easier.
Yeah. Only have to plug in the design and we're good to go.
Yeah.
That's I was disappointed because last week I couldn't attend the print design summit. And
Yeah.
I saw, I think on your Instagram or somewhere on
Hmm.
socials that you were attending.
Definitely.
Was
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure who was presenting, but if you had to
Mhm.
say and talk about one key session that you would recommend
Yeah.
for the audience, what would it be and why?
Nick Longo had one that I loved, and he's
Yeah.
really in the same realm of like beverage packaging and all that stuff in general.
Yeah.
And I'm going to butcher the title of it, but it was like a 10 like tips that every packaging designer should know from the retail buyer.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so it was he was really interviewed a bunch of these different like retail buyers that he knows in the industry and
Yep.
really just figuring out like, okay, what do you hate? What works? Like what's going to get products on the shelf? What's not? And he ended it with like, there's some tips and then also just highlighting some really cool packaging designs that those retailers sent over that were just really cool. And one of
Yeah.
them that was in there, which I ended up showing my roommates and everyone else that was sitting around me, it's a bucket of fried chicken, but it's ice cream. So
Oh.
yeah, if you get a chance, like Google it for a second or something, because it's like
Yeah.
it literally looks like KFC, like fried chicken, but it's
Yeah.
literally ice cream that you bite into, and it comes in the bin, and
Yeah.
it's like a novelty kind of thing. But I was like, that's a really interesting idea,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
works.
That's like going to MasterChef and having them create, is it cake?
Yeah, pretty much. But like
Something
it
similar,
looks
but
real.
yeah, but actual real product. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I know
Mhm.
like Nick from Adobe Live, and I know
Mhm.
you used to live stream as well.
Yep.
So how has that been? And do you plan to go back to live streaming? How has that process looked like for you as a designer? In terms of, has it brought growth to your channel and
Mhm.
potential clients for people who are looking to live stream?
I definitely think it's brought kind of growth to like at least my Behance channel.
Yep.
I think the audience there is a lot of designers and creatives.
Yep.
So I don't think it's been able to bring in as many like clients, but I
Hmm.
do think it's been very useful because I show those videos a lot of times when
Yep.
I'm like applying for a role or trying to like show people I do know how to use InDesign and Illustrator and stuff. Like, see, I
Yeah.
also have all these videos.
Yep.
It's like it helps kind of prove that in a way if
Mm.
my work doesn't already
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think that's been really cool, and it allowed me just to connect with a ton of these other creatives on here and like learn people's processes. And then I don't know, it really makes you think about your process too. The moment you're like live streaming and you have Illustrator in front of you and you're like, I've
Hmm.
been doing it this way for years, but like I know there's another way to do it. And then you have people in the comments that are always like, this way. And it's like very helpful information. And like I've learned so much just from people just commenting on my live stream and being like, hey, you can do this.
Yeah.
And then I kind of Google that and I'm like, oh crap. That's yeah, I 100% should be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you say that you've met a lot of people
Mhm.
on live streams, because we actually met on Adobe Live, and that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. It's full circle, right
Yeah.
here, right now.
No, it's really
um
cool. It's,
yeah. I also like live streaming. I think live stream, and thinking about your process and just iterating on that a little,
Mhm.
is it did impact and made me rethink my process, because first of all, limelight's on you, the camera's on you, you don't know
Mhm.
what to do anymore. I think in the
Yeah.
first few live streams I was like, is this how you use Illustrator? I didn't really know, but you're right about that. It does bring community, and the community on Behance definitely helps you grow, in not only in terms of how your design process looks like, but also how you approach community. And I think
Mhm.
that's been one of the key factors for me as well.
No, that's awesome. I will say
Yeah.
one other thing too. It teaches you also kind of how to just speak on the design as you're doing it
Yep.
because it's like it's tough to be able to like read comments, be able to like have a conversation while you're also trying to focus on this thing.
Yep.
And I don't know, that's also been something I've had to use when I work in house, different places. Sometimes you're in a meeting, things are on the fly, and I'm like, okay, I need to be able to like hold a conversation while I'm also still knocking out this
Yeah.
design. And
Yeah.
need to know how to be able to speak on these things and what they're called, and I think that's also just helped me a lot there.
Yeah, I think that also might help when you're going to meet people in person
Hmm.
and explaining design choices and telling them what's right, because at the end of the day you have to educate the clients
Yeah.
and teaching them what choices might work better for you in terms of strategy. I think something like that and thinking about your process out loud might be really helpful too. I know it helps
Hmm.
me because sometimes I find myself just creating something like, this doesn't really work and maybe I should
Yeah.
change this. So I
Hmm.
think that really helps as well.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into design influences.
Okay.
If I were to ask you what were your biggest influences in your design choices, what comes up? Don't think too much. It's a
Like,
rapid fire. Let's think about the top 3 that you
and I
can
guess
think about.
are we thinking like art styles or like artists or like?
uh, I'm thinking inspiration, so
Okay.
it can be anything. It's a wide spectrum. The top 3 that come to you.
Uh, I'll go brand wise. Liquid Death. Their
Hmm.
advertising is just something that is come out of nowhere and it's just so impactful.
Yep.
Another one, Red Bull.
Yep.
Especially if I'm sticking to the whole beverage realm, like the
Yep.
fact they can do the extreme sports, also have unique animation style is
Yep.
like, and then also like in person activations
Yep.
is really cool. And then another one that has been like PepsiCo. They have their
Hmm.
actual design Instagram where they highlight different things, and they have under their chain they have all the like the soda brands, but they also have like Frito Lay and
Yep.
like like a couple of different like food brands, like Cheetos and stuff, and
Yep.
like they do some crazy pop up activations and
Hmm.
stuff, and like they have Mountain Dew, like the stuff they're doing is really crazy. And I don't know, so if you get a chance, check out PepsiCo's design Instagram. It's
Yeah,
kind of crazy.
I'll put it here in post.
Dope. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I know you talked about activation and how these
Mhm.
brands and channels approach design. Is there something in your strategy that you look at trends or what's going on in the industry right now and implement that in your process as well? I know for me personally, I don't jump on trends a lot. I do
Mhm.
jump on it when it comes to Instagram reels or short form content,
Mhm.
but never in terms of, hey, let's do luxury fonts today, and
Mhm.
if that's just a thing of the next quarter, let's make something. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I similar, but a little different. I think yeah, trends definitely social media and short form content.
Yep.
That's you want to hit that, and you want to hit it like the timing is so important.
Yep.
And I think about that like it depends. If you try to use these trending designs in something that's gonna live long term,
Hmm.
then it very limits you, and you can very quickly see it's outdated. Like a year or two later, you kind of look back and you're like, okay, that didn't hold up. But
Yeah.
when I've worked in house for places, sometimes we would do like, like every 3 months, every quarter, we would do like, promotion or seasonal campaign.
Yep.
And I think those trends within that 3 month window seems to work well because it's still like relevant and
Yep.
it's short term. It's just like a one theme kind of thing that's, a whole campaign that's pushed and then it's done. So I think that's when that really works. But other
Yep.
times it's, but that's the only time I've really tried to follow those trends.
Yeah. Yeah. That. Yeah.
Mhm.
I thought as much. Thought as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always good to ask.
Yeah. No, it is. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to packaging design for a little bit,
Hmm.
I know you mentioned FDA guidelines and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So, how do you balance the design and the functionality and also the regulations when you're doing something like a beer label?
So thankfully, one of my not first, but like early in-house jobs
Yeah,
was working, for a brewery,
yeah,
doing as like their lead graphic designer.
yeah,
And so I was able to learn a lot just from jumping into their files and kind of seeing what they need. And
yeah,
when I was there, there was like a compliance officer, or I don't know if it was officer or manager or someone
yeah,
was compliance. And like, so I would share like, the packaging with them. They're the ones who would hardcore review the things.
yeah,
After doing that a handful of times, like, okay, I know what they're looking for. I know the mistakes I made in the past. I know, little things like ounces, being capitalized versus lowercase, for OZ, like
yeah,
acronyms and like when certain sizes you need to say in pints versus liters versus ounces. And it just varies. And it's like random weird rules. And so it's just by doing that, I've kind of learned them and been able to adapt them. one of
Hmm.
them I always go back to is like seltzer, like hard seltzer brands.
Yeah.
At least about 2 or 3 years ago, they legally had to have the word beer on them somewhere, just because
Hmm.
of like the category they fit in.
Yeah.
And so I would have it like, next to the government warning and near the barcode and the place I'm trying to hide,
Yeah.
literally just the word beer. And you start looking at like these other seltzer brands like White Claw, Wild
Yeah.
Basin, these ones, and you're like, they do say beer really small somewhere. And it's like a weird regulatory thing.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense, but like you just kind of learn them from doing. I learned from, from another business, and
Yeah.
like, and I was able to learn from that. And now I can take that knowledge and share that with some of these smaller, medium sized kind of clients I'm working with,
Yeah.
and try to stick with those things. Another
Yeah.
thing I
And
will do too is I'll go into Chat GPT and
hmm.
I'll ask it and be like, okay, I'm making, this beverage in this state, what are the things I need to keep in mind?
Yeah.
And so I'll kind of get a checkpoint list there, go to the client, a lot of conversation back and forth.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, kind of a handful of those
Yeah.
routes, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. I think increasingly, a lot of the designers that I know have been using AI in their process.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that you mentioned Chat GPT to generate and ask stuff like that. So I'm
Hmm.
wondering how reliable is using Chat GPT in a process like it?
I mean, that's a fair question. I rely on it, but
Yeah.
I don't know how, if I should, the more I think about it.
Yeah.
One of the hacks I've learned in a way with
Mhm.
ChatGPT
Yeah.
is like you give it the prompt and say something that's like, what are the regulatory things I should keep in mind in this state, for this beverage?
Yeah.
Act as if you were a compliance manager,
Mhm.
working for this thing, and like give it a role that it should
Yep.
be answering from.
Yep.
And like sometimes that does help, but
Yep.
I also like a lot of things are also just sometimes reminders. It's like, okay, 21 plus, or if it's like have the government warning on there, or like
Yeah.
the ingredients.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I rely on it some, but it's the same thing as just like not believing anything you find online.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think with the latest or one of the previous versions, you can actually search on the web and
Mm,
also make it reason. So whatever you just described was basically the ingredients for a perfect recipe. And if you turn that search and reason on, it gives you the true Google results as well.
yeah,
So
nice.
yeah, having to rely on it is great. I actually rely on it myself. I ask
Mhm,
stuff that generates ideas in my process and then use that and refine on it, because there might be some
nice.
things that I want to talk about, like for instance this call. I'm going to talk
Mhm,
about some questions and I wanted some ideas on what I can approach and how I can approach this chat with you. So I was like, hey, Chat GPT, you're an expert and you need to tell me all of this stuff, so go ahead. And I think that always works in the process. So
mhm.
other than Chat GPT and generating copy, do you use AI in your design process or your workflow otherwise?
I do. And I know a lot of designers don't, and there's a lot of mixed feelings back and
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
And so Adobe Firefly is one that I've been leaning into a lot more. And
Yeah.
I've also used Midjourney,
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I use it like, so an example I did this maybe like Friday or something, like a couple days ago,
Yeah.
is I needed a paper texture for the background of
Hmm.
an asset. And so I kind
Yeah.
of use AI for assets in a
Yeah.
way. Because
Yeah.
I think like literally if not, I would be going on something like Adobe Stock or another stock site to
Yeah.
find a paper texture, but it's other people are using these. There's other ones out there where it's like I can literally just type in paper texture right there, generate a couple options, and be like, perfect. Let me,
Yeah.
upscale that, bring it into Photoshop, even crank up the resolution even more using that AI
Yeah.
program to make it higher
Yeah.
quality. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I like to use it for like elements, and I've also used it here and there for like if I need a drawing reference. Like
Hmm.
so, an example is like I needed like an alligator, and
Yeah.
although it's probably you have to generate a few of them until you get like an alligator that actually has the right amount of fingers and
Yeah.
it looks close to what I'm going for. But for me, drawing just out of my imagination is just so challenging, and so I always kind of need
Yeah.
a visual thing to reference, and that's
Hmm.
what's been really cool. And I know I'm not like taking someone else's photography
Yep.
and just kind of like copying that as an illustration, or like, yeah, I don't know. It's been nice to just be able to generate unique things to branch off from and create creative things off of that? I don't know. I'm getting lost.
No, 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 you're good. I love that you said you need a reference image, and I use it similarly in my process to mood board and find a reference that I can work off of. And that's
Nice.
pretty cool. The paper texture part is cool because that just
Mhm,
makes you your brand or whatever brand you're working on different from
mhm.
other people using the paper texture or finding it on stock because it's unique, and you give it a specific prompt. And I might steal that idea from you and I
Do
might
it.
use
Yeah,
it in my
please.
process as well.
You definitely should, because I think about like Adobe Stock. You type in paper texture,
Yep.
like I'm gonna make up some numbers, but I bet 80% of the people choose one off that first page, and then you think about like how many people are using the same paper texture. And there's
Yep.
been assets that I've used over time, and I'm like, then I start to recognize them when I see them in other designs, and I'm like, oh, I know that fire texture or like random things like that. That I'm like, okay, yeah,
Yeah, it's like using comic papyrus in your
yeah,
designs.
definitely. And people are like, I know that.
Yeah, that's funny. I also use the ones guilty. I also use the ones on the first
That's
page.
funny.
So
Yeah, but they're probably the better ones. That's why they're on that first page and
yeah, I
showing up.
guess I
Yeah,
guess so. But then they get old, and then you can't reuse them in your all your designs. It's like
exactly.
using the same color palette for your brand or your social media, and you just lean in on the same colors. And if you're gonna go purple, you always go purple, and it just gets old.
It does. Well,
Um,
especially if you're doing client work too, because you have to be
yeah,
able to really adapt to them. And if you're
exactly.
having all purple clients, like something's different.
Yeah,
Maybe that's great, but it'd be very challenging, very rare to, find all those people that fit into that
yeah,
style.
yeah.
Not saying it's not possible, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, definitely it's possible. Purple and color definitely plays a huge role in terms of branding
Mhm.
as well. So we talked about the AI tools. Are there any
Mm.
specific other AI tools that you use in your workflow? I mean, we talked Chat GPT, we talked Midjourney,
Mhm.
we talked Firefly. What else do you use?
There's one called Runway AI
Mm-hmm.
that I've used for video,
Yeah,
and you can drop an image in there, and it'll just kind of with an AI prompt, it'll
yeah,
just kind of animate it.
yep,
And so when I was working in house at this last kind of restaurant job, we had digital menu boards, and so to streamline everything, I'd take a graphic we created, or at
yeah,
least the art part of the graphic,
yeah,
drop that in there, just animate. It was like a bird that's just like flopping around like its wings, and it's
yeah.
like maybe there's like smoke coming out or
Mm-hmm.
clouds or something,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just have like very subtle motion in there,
Yep,
and it could be like 10 seconds, 15 seconds. I think Runway I would generate like 10 seconds, and
yeah.
then I would like slow it down in After Effects to be like 15 seconds, and then I'll drop my text on top
Mm-hmm.
of that because I
Mm-hmm.
knew that the AI would completely mess up the text and it would look like a whole new language.
Yeah,
So yeah, just kind of layering assets that way to
yep.
create just very like rapidly create kind of just quick little promotions. Like one of them was just about like nachos, and so it's like, okay, how do you make this nacho be more appetizing when it's literally just a
Yeah,
photo that says try the nachos or something.
yeah.
So I don't
Just
know.
be
And that
humping
was
art director to Runway.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the more I think about it too, that was our other designer's design too. So I want to shout her out on that. But I think we
Yeah.
ended up animating it kind of in that process and yeah, go through those steps.
Yeah. I don't know if I asked this before, but has there been anything weird or unexpected that AI has generated for you? Or one of the
Hmm.
most weirdest thing that was funny or just unexpected in the recent past?
Yeah, it's tough. It's always got to be animals and people.
Yeah.
And that's what I've realized too is like I like to generate plants a lot, and
Mm.
it'll just kind of make its own plants. But I feel like people don't know
Yeah.
that like it doesn't feel as uncanny or like I don't know. People don't notice that as much as like if there was an animal that was different or a
Hmm.
person that has an extra limb or something like that. And
Yeah.
that's where I've seen it like the most is like you have someone with two arms right here and they'll be doing a thing and you
Yeah.
have to kind of look closely because all of a sudden you might notice there's like another arm that's like doing a thing here, but it's like slightly hidden.
Yeah.
Um, but what's cool is even when it messes up stuff like that, taking that into Photoshop and then using like the generative what do you call that? Like the kind of remove
Generative.
object and
Yeah.
just their generative features in there.
Yeah.
And I've been able to clean up some of these AI images by using another AI tool to use
Hmm.
AI to remove things. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
really, it's about using like the tools we already have with like the Adobe suite, and then
Hmm.
kind of combining some of these other ones. And so it's never perfect right off the bat, but it's
Yeah.
like I'm able to use those assets just from my other graphic design skills and kind of chop them up and use them in different ways.
Yeah, yeah. What I'm hearing is that a lot of designers, I know we talked about this or touched on this a little earlier,
Hmm.
that a lot of designers have conflicting thoughts about AI and
Hmm.
even artists. And it's a great point that you just mentioned that having those graphic design skills or the foundations is important because
Hmm.
if something unexpected is generated, you need those skills to kind of clean up and refine your result.
Hmm.
And I think it's not only just enhancing the process but speeding it up as well. And if you're not using it personally, I think these are my personal opinions,
Hmm.
but I think that if you're not using AI in your workflow, you're probably missing out. And it's interesting how it's rapidly evolving every single day. Like,
Yeah.
I recently edited this video about someone using the pendant by Limitless,
Okay.
and
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
yeah, it's an AI recording tool and a gadget that you clip on, and it records all the meetings and it records everything that you say. So you can
Oh,
use
interesting.
it for
Yeah.
various aspects of your life, and it's so interesting that you can record a meeting, you can record stuff. Obviously, rules and consent varies
Hmm.
from region to region, but
Hmm.
it's interesting how that can play an important role for something like in-person meetings and going somewhere. And you don't need to take down notes for anything. If your
Yeah.
client is okay with it, you can just turn it on and talk to everything about it and then go back to your notes once you're home and see if you missed on anything. And it also
Yeah.
gives you a summary and you can search on the app what things you talked about.
Dang.
So it's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
when you think about it, it's like all the other time I would just be taking notes and missing out
Hmm.
on the real connection that I have in person with the client,
Yeah.
instead writing down on my iPad or somewhere otherwise. Like, yeah, so it's interesting. So that brings me to the next question. Do you
Hmm.
see AI as a threat or an enhancement to creativity?
It's tough to say right now,
Yeah,
because it's so early stages. And I think some of the things that Adobe is doing with like the content credentials and like some of these other things
yeah,
to help, be transparent about AI on the web
yep,
is very cool. And I think that's going in the right direction. But it does worry me in ways, it's like how quickly this is adapted in the last, what, 2 or 3 years, even,
yep,
to be like, okay, what does 5 or 10 years look like?
yeah,
It's very interesting and it's cool, but I think it's important as designers to stay up to date with it and
hmm,
like and follow along because it does affect our careers, whether it considers us obsolete one day or if it's like a tool that just speeds it up our
yep,
whole process. It's I think it's about like having these things regulated in the best way and making sure that how they're trained is like ethical.
yep,
Because like I said too, I've used Midjourney and Adobe Firefly, and that's kind of why I'm trying to transition over to Adobe Firefly when I'm using assets,
yeah,
because that one, to my knowledge, is trained fully off their Adobe stock library. Where Midjourney, I'm assuming that is maybe just scraping the web and just finding things that it doesn't have consent to do and training on it, and then you can generate art,
yeah,
like someone else's style, and that's pretty messed up.
yeah,
So yeah, it's still very early on and
yeah, yeah,
weird. So I have
yeah.
mixed feelings.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think having the ability to actually train the model to teach my design language and my illustrative style would be cool. So I
Mhm.
didn't have to iterate on my process and I would just give an input and give it some examples and be like, hey, this is how I draw and this is what my brand colors look like. So can you generate social media templates for 100 days? I don't know.
Yeah,
That would be cool because I won't have to do anything. I would just ask it to generate things and then post it. Not saying that I'm doing this, but
but
maybe I would in the future.
yeah, but it is cool. But like to an extent too, because it's like on the opposite end of that. Like if I was able to go in there and be like, make this like Anika's style, and then I was able to produce all these things, then it's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh crap! Like it's about like how it's regulated. Where if you
Yeah.
could have that be just yours, and
Yeah. I
I don't know,
think
it's just so early.
I think that's where the regulation part comes in, where
Mhm.
even with Adobe's content authenticity initiative, I think having the know-how, the model to know that this is actually produced by the person uploading it
Mhm.
with like the metadata, I think that would be useful. And
Yeah.
perhaps there's a way for it. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there is. So yeah, yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out. We'll come back to
Yeah.
this when this
And
happens.
well, and as we're talking about AI, too, it jogged my memory
Yep,
on two other uses that
yep,
some buddies of mine are doing.
yep,
So one of them, he's he's kind of messing around producing like AI music,
Hmm.
and it's like I remember him showing it to me like a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's so cool. It's okay,"
Yeah.
And but like he sent me one like a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I was a little surprised. Like it sounded like very legit, and
Mm-hmm.
like the lyrics were funny, like because he was able to type in a prompt, and then I think the song, because he did it for me just to show me it, and it was all
Yeah.
about like make the logo bigger. And so he generated a whole reggae song about like make the logo bigger. And I'm like, the
Yeah.
lyrics are flowing well. It kind of
Yeah.
sounds like these other reggae bands that like I'm familiar with too, to where I was like,
Yeah.
if I just heard that, I wouldn't know it was AI. And I think that was pretty freaky.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
another version though is one of my old managers, he's been experimenting because he's kind of going back to school for his master's.
Mm-hmm.
And what he does is he takes like maybe like a chapter from his book and
Yeah.
he drops it in this program that's like an AI program that creates an AI podcast. And so it
Mm.
makes basically a conversation between two different people
Mm-hmm.
recapping everything that was in his like block of text.
Yep.
And he showed me it before too, and I was like, it's interesting. Like he did that same thing with like we had analytics or like statistics at the end of like a campaign or promo.
Yeah.
And so like just as a joke, he kind of put all that into this AI podcast, and it just two people are basically having a podcast episode about what our analytics were for that last quarter. And it was like that's crazy. Like it
That's
sounded a little
crazy,
more
dog.
like
Yeah.
robotic, but like it's crazy it made
Yeah.
that conversation and it was decent.
Yeah. I've actually used the podcast generator one. I'm
Oh nice.
forgetting what it's called, but I have used it
Yeah, I
and
don't know.
I had a similar experience, but this was a while ago. So I'm
Mhm.
interested in seeing how that works. I recently used HeyGen to create my AI avatar, and I inputted
Gotcha.
my video, my talking
Mhm.
head into it to see what generates. And then it generated something. I uploaded like a 10-minute video of me, and it was raw footage, and I was not articulating as much. So the key is to articulate and move your hands and use gestures.
Yeah.
And so the AI learns from it and generates a video for you. Um, it was not as good as I expected, but I
Mhm.
was on the free version. So maybe the pro version or the subscription plan gives you more.
Yeah.
Um, and it also needs to be like overly articulated. So maybe that's something that I want to do as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's interesting
interesting.
to see how that works, because I would definitely use something like that for short form content.
Mhm.
And while I'm creating everything myself, the intro and outros take so much time sometimes that I would be like, hey, can I just generate it with just my face?
Oh,
But then
100%.
yeah, but then that gives me that weird thing that am I giving my data to this model or the internet,
I
and
know.
possibly opening it up for so many other things that could happen to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is it's scary because I see that happening on like TikTok or something where it'll
Yeah.
be like some influencer or a politician
Yeah.
or someone random and you'll there's just AI content with them that's like pretty decent and it's like a meme basically, but
Yeah.
it's scary because they have, so much info on this person because they're so public,
Yeah.
on the web that they can
Yeah.
train these things to be like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. I might hold off then.
Fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. um but yeah, that also brings up this unique question and scenario where I think about using AI, and a lot of people who are probably watching might be thinking too, that how do you maintain originality in your designs when you're using AI for inspiration?
Ooh. For me, it's been I so doing freelance work
Yeah.
early on, I was just talking about processes, but the
Yeah.
biggest one for me is my design process.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is if I veer too far off that process,
Yeah.
sometimes the projects go off the rails or, you know, un, unforeseen things start to happen. And so one of the key parts of my process is like sketching and
Yeah.
just sticking with like paper, pencil, even if it's really crappy, even if it's like very tiny,
Yeah.
just kind of working through those ideas to generate the I because I think the most important thing we're doing as designers is creating like the idea, of like what's working. It's like whether I'm the one physically designing it, or whether I'm working with third party designers, creatives, 3D modelers, whether I'm art directing someone else. It's really the core of it is like the concept and idea.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's the sketching is how I work through all those ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what keeps it original is just sticking to that process
Yep.
because yeah, if I start going too far off where I'm just almost sketching or brainstorming in ChatGPT, It's
Yeah.
like I don't know if it's given other people these same prompts. If like I say, give me 100 ideas,
Yep.
maybe it gave 90 of these to other people before, and we all are doing the one that was like a good, obviously good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like creating a new logo, and the first
mhm.
100 ideas are the ideas that everyone gets, and then you look it up
Yeah,
and someone's already created it, and you're like, oh, well,
yeah,
back to the drawing board.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think too, it's like using AI. I feel like it's gonna go to the low hanging fruit,
Yep.
and like if stick with fruit, I guess. If it's an Apple logo, it's gonna. Well, I guess that's terrible because Apple uses an apple. Let's say if it's all about a tree and it literally uses trees in there, it's like sometimes being as a designer or creative, you're looking for those outside the box ideas that still mean the same things.
Yeah.
Whereas in like you don't want to just if like the yeah, let's say the brand is like red tree, and you make them their logo is literally just a red tree, it's gonna be I don't know, it's not gonna stand out.
Yeah.
So it's about like going deeper, and I don't know if AI will go deeper sometimes.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
All right. With that said,
Mhm.
one last question for you.
Sounds good.
What are some of the industries that outside of design that
Mhm.
influence your decision making process?
Ooh. Um, outside of design, I would say definitely like TV shows, movies,
Hmm.
like whether it's like old school kind of ones that are shot with like interesting angles and stuff, or just newer ones.
Yeah.
Um, definitely just which I know it's still design. It's like going to the grocery store and seeing all the packaging everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like most people don't think of it as design, but it's like it's everywhere. And so it's just about looking at the things around us. It's hard to like think of stuff that's outside design because when you start thinking about it, it's like, yeah, that kind of is design.
Yeah.
Even if it's
Yeah.
like street signs or just like random things.
Yep.
Um, so I don't really have a great answer, but
No, I mean,
I don't know.
no, I mean,
Yeah.
design is everywhere, and so is inspiration. That's cliched,
Yeah.
but it's still true.
It's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. All right, thanks so much, Colby, for
Yeah,
joining
thank
us
you.
today. Where can people find you and your work?
Mhm. Yeah, so you can see my portfolio at colbyclites.com. If you want to connect, I have a contact form on there.
Yep.
Also, check me out on Instagram, Behance, LinkedIn, stuff like that. It's literally just Colby Clites, kind of first, last name, one word. So, yeah.
Yeah, Colby
Um,
Clites everywhere on the internet.
oh,
All
yeah.
right, thank you so much, Colby, and
Yeah, thank you so
we'll see
much,
you
Anika.
another time.
Cool.
I loved hearing about Colby's transition into design, his unique approach to client work, and how he dives into AI with illustration. If you've loved this episode, I would love for you to stick around because I have a few guests lined up. Our next episode will feature Fergie, the anti beige designer, as she calls it. I'm excited to dive into UX, color, and all things anti beige. Until then, stay safe and stay creative. Bye for now.